A fight is going on inside of me. It's a terrible fight. It's between two wolves. One is evil, his anger, envy, self-pity, ignorance, lies, and ego. The other one is good. He is truth, courage, kindness, respect, humbleness, wisdom, and love. The same fight is going on inside you, and every other person too. And that's what worries me.
Grandfather, which wolf will win?
The one that you feed. The one that you feed.
This is the lesson you will take away from the local history of Saginaw County. Two wolves inside every one of us. One can do bad things, one can do great things. Only you can determine that path. Some people learn this at an early age, some late, some never. Why is local history important for you to understand? Because there were kids just like you, a long time ago, who fed their wolves their way and created one of the most beautiful places to live and raise a family in the whole country. Saginaw has reinvented itself since its founding in 1835. The generations before paid a price for the quality of life we have today. They paid it with you in mind, and their one request to each and every one of you is simple. Your job, your responsibility, is to make the next generation better than yours. Make Saginaw better, your community better, your home, your family, yourself. What built Saginaw County? How did we start from 0 people to over 190,000? How can we use this knowledge to create a better life for all of us? And most importantly, you will learn how to define economic development. Every one of you is capable of doing something good. Good for you, good for others. There are thousands of years of wisdom, skill, innate intelligence, artistic brilliance, and natural love of life in the DNA of all of us. With that as our common denominator, our story starts with our Native American brothers.
And Anishinabe means those who descend from the original person are those who came from above. And so in our creation stories, the creator first had to think of what could be, what might be, and what should be. And so we're told that everything that we know of in the universe and everything that we have had to first come as a thought from the creator. And so we are told that here, Mother Earth, Saskakamakwab in our language, Mother Earth was the first female spirit. And so from there, the plants and the animals were placed next on Earth. And obviously we have this wonderful grandfather son that watches over us too and helps us. But last thing that the Creator made was man. And we were told as Anishinabe, we were created and placed here on Turtle Island. And so when I say Turtle Island, you might know it as the Americas, today. And so we originally were on the eastern coastlines, and we actually are told that we had prophets that came to us and told us things that would unfold throughout time, and that our survival depended on us leaving where we originally were placed. And so we migrated through the water tributaries up into the Great Lakes, and we migrated as far north as up into today what's known as Canada, and as far west as today is known as Minnesota. So the Anishinaabe are throughout the Great Lakes areas, but we say along the eastern way, those waterways, those are our distant relatives, because every generation, this took many generations, every generation there were people that thought on that great migration that I think this is where we're supposed to stay. So we had people that stayed each generation, whereas some kept migrating.
Anishinabe is a term referring to the shared culture and related languages of the many Algonquin tribes of the Great Lakes area. The tribes include the Ojibwe, Algonquin, Ottawa, Potawatomi, Sault Sioux, Nipissing, Mississauga, and Ojai Cree. They are not identical to each other, each having their own identities and independent leadership, but they all share kinship ties and cultural traditions. Anishinaabe women were farmers and did the cooking and child rearing. The men were hunters and warriors when they had to be. Their homes were small huts called wigwams. The families usually had 3 or 4 children and lived in small communities of about 100 to 300 people. The women wore long dresses, and the men wore breechcloths and leggings, and everyone wore moccasins. The design of clothes varied from tribe to tribe. Their art and craft work is beautiful.
We talk about our brothers. So in English, I can talk about, you would call them the elements, which is water, air, earth, fire, your plants, your animals. We were not created first, man wasn't. We were the last ones. And we struggled in our teachings. We struggled so bad, we were dying out. And it was actually the animals that came forth and said, let us teach them. They don't know how to live here. Let us teach them. And so we were taught as part of our teachings that they showed us how to make homes. They showed us, what plants we could eat and not eat. They showed us how to never overtake in one area, to move to different areas and that. Every plant you see, there is a use for it, whether it's a food, a medicine, or it can be used for making baskets, clothing, housing. Everything is of value.
The birch bark canoe was one of the greatest forms of transportation ever made. Lightweight, sturdy, it is said the canoe transformed the nation of Canada and North America. It's a combination of engineering, science, and art all in one. Like everything the Indians had or made, it came from Mother Earth. The family, their culture, and history are very important in understanding our Indian brothers' way of life.
We honor the past. We are thankful that our ancestors, they went through so many changes and struggles, and that their perseverance and their resiliency has enabled us to be able to be here today. And by us practicing our language, learning our language, keeping our culture alive. Family is everything. As a matter of fact, relationships are everything. In our culture, we are told that at no point ever in our lifetime should we ever be without a support system. Each and every one of us are important. Each and every one of us is a gift, and we all have a purpose, and that we're there for the good of the all.
The first white men they encountered were French traders. The French intermarried with different clans and formed relationships. When the English came, they weren't interested in relationships, but they were interested in trade and acquiring land. The Indian and the white man. 2 entirely different cultures, different in their thinking and ideas in almost every respect, concerning trade, property, ownership, and the value of goods or services.
Being that deep spiritual belief that we have and knowing that we're spiritual beings, we were too connected. We said we're not willing to leave the place of our ancestors. We were guided here by the Creator for a reason. And so therefore we know this is our responsibilities to be here. And another thing that really hindered those negotiations back in that time is our belief systems were so different. Like we did not, it's such an alien thought to believe somebody could own Mother Earth. We know we're a spiritual being in this form. We know Mother Earth to be a spiritual being in the form of the earth. How do you own that?
A treaty was signed in 1819 between the Chippewa Nation and the United States government that ceded 6 million acres so the area could open up for settlement. By the 1830s, an investor named Samuel Dexter bought the land where an abandoned fort was located, which would become Saginaw City, and plotted out the land that would be for sale for settlement in Saginaw. Sam knew this area was special. It had farmland, woodlands, rivers, lakes, and natural beauty. Start something, and they will come.
What really changed and really spurred growth was the demand for lumber. There was a national demand for lumber. The East Coast forests had been largely depleted, and the secret to Saginaw's success, really, when you look at it, is its position on the river system. And it really it's the same reason why this area has been settled for thousands of years, that the Native Americans had found Saginaw a perfect place to hunt, fish, and gather is because of the river system. And what the river system did for Saginaw was really positioned it so it was a perfect place for processing the pine from Michigan's Great Pine Forest. But Saginaw really became, within a generation, starting in the 1860s, became the lumber capital of the world.
The Saginaw Valley was the leading lumbering area between 1840 and 1860, when the number of mills in operation throughout the state doubled, and the value of their products increased from $1 million to $6 million annually. Rapid growth continued, and by 1869, the Saginaw Valley alone was earning $7 million yearly. The vast majority of men employed in the lumber industry worked long hours for low pay. Lumberjacks, most often single men in their 20s, spent the winter in the woods, working from dawn to dusk 6 days a week, cutting, hauling, and piling logs. They were usually paid between $20 and $26 per month, and were also provided room and board.
The lumbering process was divided into really seasonal activities. So companies would form lumber camps on convenient to the pine lands they were cutting. The men would cut the lumber in the winter when the ground was frozen, drag the logs, which is a major part of the project, to the riverbank or the tributaries to the major rivers, so that they could then in the spring be floated down the river where they were sorted by the marks that were applied to the logs and then delivered to the mills in the summer time.
Saginaw had another great asset: farmers. Saginaw County is a very rich farming area, blessed with soil left from thousands of years ago during the last ice age. It's called Kalkaska soil. Between 1840 and 1900, the population went from less than 1,000 to over 80,000. And folks gotta eat.
In the 19th century, many farmers were really focusing on raising things they would need to survive. They're really, if you had 40 acres, you could actually have a little bit extra to sell, but you could have enough to support your family with what you raised and what could be sold. So it's very different today, where you see vast tracts of land farmed. Farms were broken into different fields, each one devoted to a particular crop.
The Saginaw County area, like most areas and soon-to-be counties in America between 1820 and 1860, they were a nice, quiet place to live, a place with river access to almost anywhere, and farming was the economic development engine of that period. It was about this time Saginaw County was starting to diversify even more. The logging industry meant jobs. In the early 1860s, our African American community had enough people in their community to build their first churches. They would be the cornerstones of the community.
Bethel AME Church was started the year before Zion, and some of the same families that started Bethel AME in 1867 started Zion in 1868.
Okay.
So that kind of, and that relationship has continued as far as a bond of relationships. It's the oldest, that one is the oldest African American church, As our pastor, our retired pastor used to say, it's the oldest church with the African American experience. That's how he used to always say it. Back then, when you look at the history and you think of the climate of our country, the church was the center of celebrations, of anything that took place, almost just like it is today. When we look at our families, when we look at our community, when we look at the social, because it was the social part and the religious part of a community, and that was the church. So a lot of the things that they dressed up for, that they celebrated, it all came from, being involved in church work and church fellowship.
But trouble was brewing far away from Saginaw County. People were talking Civil War. Our nation was only 85 years old, the first nation ever established based on the common man and freedom and democracy. Now we were about to test that freedom. Can a state decide not to enforce a national law? Can a state make up its own laws based on its own needs or desires, even if one of those is to own slaves? What about all that land west of the Mississippi? Will they make up their own laws? Will they also have slaves? These were the questions that had to be addressed if this nation was going to be true to its founding. The first shots were fired in 1861 at Fort Sumter, Charleston, South Carolina. The last major battle, which brought an end to the war, was 4 years later in Gettysburg in 1865. In between time, over 620,000 men died in combat or of disease, starvation, or accidents.
Michigan, man-wise, there were just over 90,000 Michigan men and boys in some cases that went off to war for the Civil War, all the way through. From 1861, they were still enlisting in 1865 during the war. That was 23% of Michigan's 1860 census population. The military age was 18 to 45. We had some from Saginaw County as young as 15. That was the youngest I've been able to find so far. And one, the oldest, was 61 when he went. But especially you're talking these 18, 19, 20, early 20s, it was fun. Here you're living in a farming community. What are you doing every day? You go out, you hitch up the horses, you plow the field, you have to weed, whatever, and that's what you do day in and day out. If you're lucky, you might have a job in town, you're a carpenter or something like that, but you're still doing the same stuff all the time. Here's a chance to get out, leave Saginaw County. A lot of these guys never left their hometowns, never left their counties. And here they get a chance to go off and do something. Oh, this is going to be fun. Let's all join up and go. And we'll go down there. We'll lick those Rebs, and 30 days, at the beginning of the war, 30 days, and it'll be over. We'll have one big battle, and they'll run for home. And that's what they thought at the very beginning, to get out and do something like that. And these, the stories of the battle would come back, and then on the end would be tacked on the casualty list of those that were killed and those that were wounded in the battle. So you found out that your son or dad or cousin or brother was killed from the newspaper. The state of Michigan sent 1,600 African-American soldiers off to war. The 102nd U.S. Colored Troops, and that was the name that they used back then, USCT, was one of the biggest regiments that was formed in Michigan. And through my research, I found that there were two gentlemen from Saginaw, African-American gentlemen, that did go off and serve in the Civil War from Saginaw County. If the Civil War hadn't happened, who knows, what would have happened after that, or if it had a different outcome or whatever. But because it happened, it shaped where we live now. It shaped the modern United States. People went from saying these United States to the United States because of the Civil War.
The Civil War ends, President Lincoln is assassinated, our nation mourns, but it must heal the wounds from the war. Michigan and Saginaw kids come back home. Luckily, there were still the farms, and after all that bloodshed, a nice, peaceful farm sounded pretty good. After the Civil War, America had to rebuild, and this was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, where machines would do the work of man. With the advent of steel, cars, and electricity, entrepreneurs created the America the world knows today. General Motors, born in Flint, Michigan, was started by William Durant and Charles Mott. Both of them were entrepreneurs who built carriages for horses. But when they saw what fellow entrepreneur Henry Ford did, they followed suit. The Detroit auto industry directly fed into Saginaw County, providing thousands of jobs. The Industrial Revolution changed everything about America and the world. It all started with ideas from common people who educated and skilled themselves. I repeat, educated and skilled themselves. Steel, electricity, gasoline, oil, car manufacturing, they changed the world. They created millions of jobs, and because they were here in America, immigration exploded. Most of the world, under leadership of kings or queens or religion, were poor, dirt poor. What America meant to them was a life for their family, and so they came to America and to Saginaw County. When the 1900s started, Saginaw County still had its farming backbone, but the businesses had to reinvent themselves. It went from a lumber economy to foundries that processed coal, copper, and iron, then to a component parts manufacturing economy, and companies like Jackson, Church, and Wilcox reinvented themselves many times. These three guys invented a gear for a car that enabled the car to travel on a rough dirt road. When World War II started, the company switched from gears to making guns.
The plants is what really brought African Americans to this community. They came here to work, to earn a living, to look for, for a better life for their families. And that continued. My family came in the late 1920s. The money that they would make, they would send back home to support their families who were either with other family members or to help to plan for the future that they were going to have here. Hard life, but they were very determined, and they knew what their struggles had been, and they were going to make life better for their families.
In 1938, with war clouds looming in Europe, the War Department contacted the company and said it would receive an order to produce machine tools and dies to make a .30 caliber machine gun. They needed it produced within a year. The company went to work. A new plant 7 months ahead of schedule, and within a year, they were to deliver 280 machine guns to the Detroit Ordnance District. On the delivery date, they had not 280 machine guns, but over 28,000, and lowered the price to manufacture from $667 to $140 per gun. When a Grand Rapids plant couldn't keep up with an order for the M1 carbine, Saginaw Steering Plant 2 took the order and became known as the gun plant, and in only 33 days delivered 8,000 more carbines than the order called for. President Roosevelt called Michigan the arsenal of democracy because we had the manufacturing, the talent, the people with the manufacturing skills, and the attitude to succeed. The Saginaw Chamber of Commerce started in 1863, one of the first of its kind in the nation. It was started by the lumber barons. These entrepreneurs knew if Saginaw County was to continue and grow, it had to diversify its economy. The chamber was formed to do just that. Land, money, and expertise were set aside to develop the future of Saginaw. The big question from then until today: what unlocks talent? Who has the talent? And how does the talent motivate itself?
You know, we ask our members and our board, our volunteers all the time, what do you need as an employer? And I'll start real general in this. And the first thing is that we're finding that students are graduating from high school with poor social and soft skills. And by that I mean they don't have a strong ability to communicate, whether it's a written communication, whether it's verbal communication, whether it's to make eye contact with somebody and carry on a conversation. It's so caught up into the devices, paying attention to their devices, that we've lost track of how to communicate with one another. Also, a soft skill such as showing up to work on time and making sure that that's important to them. For some reason, we've lost that importance and that relevance and that respect that we've got on there. So employers will tell me, hey, I want somebody that is going to look me in the eye when I want to talk to them and pay attention and listen. I want them to be to work on time. I want them to pay attention on what's going on at work, and then we can go from there. But really, there's such a gap right now in skills when it comes to skilled trades or career technical education. Whether it's a carpenter, whether it's a plumber, or an electrician, an auto mechanic, all the way up into engineers and technicians. I mean, there's such a huge need. Someone told me the other day that just in this region, which is about a 3-county region, there will be 7,500 job openings in skilled trades within the next 3 years. And they added up the number of students that are graduating, and there's only 5,000 students graduating. So there's a big gap in there. We need students, especially in high school and middle school, need to realize that there's a great opportunity for a career out there in skilled trades. Yes, there's some real smart folks that would really be beneficial for them to go to college and get a degree in whatever field that they want to be. But there's a tremendous need for folks that said, you know, the academic side of things, the book side of things maybe isn't my strong suit, and I know that there's a great career out there for me. So there's still a need for engineers. So if your interest is that and you want to pursue that, right now there are a lot of job openings. I know next year is looking for 200 engineers right now, and they can't find them in our area. They have to go recruit even overseas to recruit that. But high-end service folks, technicians in the medical field, whether it's radiology or even technicians for emergency vehicles, emergency help, and so forth, there's a need for that. Tremendous need for, as we understand, even automotive technicians. If anybody's tried to fix their own car lately, they realize that it's, I can't even find, where the oil pan is anymore. And there's so much technology in there. You're an electronic engineer anymore on auto mechanics. So there's a great need for that. But probably the biggest thing is really the soft skills and be able to, respect your employer and go to work and be productive every day.
Let's do some basic math and see what filling these jobs does for you and the community. At an average pay rate of $20 per hour for a skilled worker, $20 times 40 hours equals $800 per week. $800 times 52 weeks equals $41,600 plus benefits. $41,600 times 7,500 jobs equals $312 million per year. That money gets spent locally on schools, restaurants, art, entertainment, and sports. These are only some of the skilled jobs Saginaw employers need to fill with your talent. You are the next generation. You will have to man the post. There will be a huge demand for skilled workers, while the demand for unskilled with less education will decrease.
You'll never be out of work. As long as you'll constantly get phone calls, you'll constantly work, you'll never be out of work if you want to work.
So I chose plumbing because of job security and guarantee of all the trades. Heating and cooling is a luxury. Electrical is a luxury. Plumbing is a necessity.
Welding is a very skillful trade in which there's jobs everywhere for. I mean, you could go anywhere, and any fabrication shop, they're always looking for welders.
The Indian, the white man, the black man, and brown, we're all here together. We're in this thing called life together. This is our home. We're all Americans. Our founders created something out of a chaotic world that still exists today. Their hopes were generations later, our civilization would still understand the meaning of freedom. The more you educate yourself, the freer you will become. You can be that one person, and that's the point. You can be the doctor or the nurse, the paramedic, the cop, the fireman that saves a life. You can be the crane operator that constructs roads and buildings, the electrician that provides the power. You can be the teacher or coach that motivates kids to greatness, the carpenter that builds. But you too have to educate yourself to find purpose. You need to support each other more, not tear one another down. And the family unit is still, and always will be, your most important support system.
Kids should know their history because they need to know who they are. They need to know that somebody paved a way for them, that you may think your life is hard, but if you know your history, you'll know that those who came before you had it even harder. You will know that the accomplishments of those who came before you, what they were able to do, and if they could do it, you can do it too.
For those of you real smart kids, and you know who you are, the world needs you to solve big problems like hunger, disease, safeguarding the environment, things like nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, and biogenetics. You can create the industries of the future right here in Saginaw. For the rest of us, support the smart kids. You just never know who the next great entrepreneur will be, the next great artist, actor, or inventor. And friends remember friends. They also remember the bullies. The bullies, the kids who haven't learned how to succeed without intimidation and fear, the kids who hate to see others gain success, you know who they are. Don't let them bring you down to their level. Get it in your head. You have goals in your life, and it doesn't include them. You find your purpose in life through your own education. You get out of it what you put into it. The answer to economic development is you. And to all the young girls in Saginaw County, all these jobs are available to you as well. Boys are taught to be brave. Girls are taught to be perfectionists. Economic development needs more brave women, skilled women, entrepreneurial women, women with character, intelligence, and the courage to put yourself out there and do. Do it for yourself because you want to, and don't worry about perfection.
We all have a talent, okay? We all have a gift. Utilize that talent and utilize that gift. So when you find your talent, your gift, you can come back and give back to the community. It's very important that you choose the people that you associate yourself with. Sometimes you can associate yourself with that rowdy crowd, that rowdy group who don't have any kind of like goals in life, okay? Pick your friends wisely, okay? Make sure they have that same vision in life, that you want to be somebody, okay? Because you have to look at the big picture. One of these days, you're going to grow up. You're going to be a mother. You're going to be a father. What will you be able to tell your son or your daughter, okay, how to make it thus far. Every generation is a change. You know, I can just see the change from when I was born and raised in the city of Saginaw, from the 40s to the 50s to the 60s to the 70s to the 80s, okay? Everything has changed. Everything has changed. But the most important thing, I pick my friends. A lot of my friends that I grew up with, they're here at Zion Missionary Baptist Church today.
Our motto here is to honor, respect, and remember. We honor our veterans, all of our Michigan veterans here. We honor them by having these displays. We respect them, as we should all of our veterans, no matter what time period they're from. You know, no matter what your thoughts are on whatever conflict it might have been, you know, most of these men and women went because their country called, or went because they were sent. They didn't want to go either. Who in their right mind wants to go to a war zone and possibly have to kill somebody? Nobody. But remember, and if I could say anything to the adults, to the youth, to everybody in this country, remember your veterans. Remember what our men and women are doing today. I have never heard, knock on wood, of a single terrorist act in Saginaw. Remember that there's somebody out there right now, this minute, today, tonight, somewhere around the world, keeping that from happening at your house or in your town. That's what we want to remember.
All of what you see in Saginaw County started from kids like you. From the great Chippewa Nation to early white and black settlers, all the right things, all the wrong things, and we all know the difference. Saginaw County will be yours sooner than you think. Your job is to be an example for your kids and grandkids. Make it right. Feed the wolf you want to be.